So it's been almost a year and a half now since Samsung released its Tab S8 series, so the Tab S8, the S8 Plus, and the S8 Ultra, and I wanted to go over them and talk about them and see how they're holding up after that time. So let's see how these current tablets hold up in today's market. So obviously you have your S8, your S8 Plus, and S8 Ultra as I mentioned. The S8 I believe starts at a price of $699, so just about $700. The S8 Plus starts at around $900, and then the S8 Ultra starts at $1,099, so $1,100. Of course, you can find them on sale for sure, all of them under $1,000 for sure, anywhere from $500 or $400 dollars to about $900 or so, depending on the model and also the type of storage you get. And I still think they're kind of, a little overpriced, but you still get a pretty decent flagship tablet here. So all of them are going to have the exact same design, for the most part, an aluminum armor frame. It's going to be a flush, clean looking tablet. It's very comfortable in the hand, even with the tablets getting bigger. It does get a bit awkward to use, so if you're going to be using it mostly handheld, you're going to want to go with at least the S8 or S8 Plus. And if you're going to be using the tablets mostly propped up, then you'll be fine with an S8 Plus, or better yet, you might want to consider an S8 Ultra. But besides that, the designs are very similar across the board. You're going to get the same design and materials. You will notice that the S8 is the thickest of the three. It is obviously also the smallest, so obviously you need to make it just a little bit thicker to be able to fit all the components necessary. Besides that, you have your little camera bump in the top left. You have this glossy little area, which is for the S Pens, for it to charge it magnetically and wirelessly. You also have these edges that are kind of flat, but they're not sharp. They got like a rounded finish, like it was sanded off and it was softened off. So again, it feels pretty comfortable in hand. The weight's also pretty evenly distributed throughout the tablet. You can feel that one side is just a little bit heavier, but honestly, again, it's pretty well distributed, so it feels pretty nice. Even with the tablets getting bigger, obviously they get heavier, so you definitely want to consider that as well if you don't want to get a super heavy tablet. But all three of them are relatively heavy, so they got a decent weight to them. They don't feel lightweight and cheap. They also don't feel super heavy. I also want to mention that the antenna design and the minimum branding is also very clean looking. Then you have a Samsung logo, and then you have a little small AKG logo at the bottom. And then I have noticed that over time, I've noticed that the paint starts to chip off a little bit if you like scrape it against something or if you bump it against something. There's little dents here and there. And mostly on my Tab S8 Ultra, because that's the one I use the most, especially around the USB charger. When I go to plug it in, I'm kind of sometimes just like trying to guess where it's at and not trying to look and plug it in. So I ended up scuffing it a little bit, but over time, I think it's still holding up really well. Also depends on what kind of case you're using, which we'll go over in a little bit here. All three of them have a power button and the volume rocker on the same spot, top left or top right, whichever orientation you're looking at the device. But the Tab S8 does have the power button also functioning as a built-in fingerprint sensor. The other two, the S8 Plus and the S8 Ultra, have an under-display fingerprint sensor, and those biometrics are overall pretty good. Like I said, they have the fingerprint sensor. The Tab S8 is going to be the fastest and most reliable. You can just use a physical fingerprint sensor. The under-display ones are optical, and they seem to work about 90% of the time. There's sometimes that will miss, and it will require you to be a little bit more mindful of where you're pressing and how long you're pressing for. They also all come with facial recognition, which works about 85% of the time. There's some times where you're at a weird angle where it may not notice you, or if you're in a very low light environment, then it also will fail. And as I mentioned, USB-C, all of them have a single USB-C port. I would love to see a tablet someday come with at least 2 USB-C ports, because if you really want to make these tablets into a productivity machine, I feel like you need at least 2 USB-C ports. One port to be able to charge, and a second port to be able to plug something else in. Of course, you can get dongles, but I feel like the ability to add another port to this bigger device is definitely possible. Maybe, I'm not sure, I'm not an engineer. Then all fours have quad 5-inch speakers, and they all sound really good. Even from the Tab S8, the smaller one, it does a really good job of just making that music sound pretty loud. All of them are really loud, but they don't have the best amazing bass out there. You can definitely feel it lacks a little bit of oomph, but it compensates with all that loudness. So I think overall, it's a pretty decent speaker for definitely watching movies and shows and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. For music, it's definitely more than passable if you want to listen to music while you're doing something. The one thing I don't like on these tablets is going to be the haptics. They just don't feel really nice. They don't feel precise. They don't feel crisp or anything like that. They just feel like a vibration motor. You just feel the tablet vibrate, especially when you're using a keyboard or when you get a notification or trying to put in your keypad. It just feels cheap, especially on the smaller Tab S8, because it's a smaller area and that vibration, the motor is more condensed in a smaller area. You can definitely feel it a little bit more. You can almost see it. Like it's just that strong sometimes that I just don't like it. It's not that great of a haptic engine in my opinion. On the S8 Plus and S8 Ultra, because it's a bigger tablet, you don't feel it as aggressively, but it's just also not the best. And at the bottom, you do have your proprietary pins with magnets to be able to attach a keyboard. I think it's proprietary. I'm not 100% sure. I've only ever used the Samsung keyboard, so I know it works 100% with those. So I'm not sure if a third-party keyboard could work. But either way, getting into those cases, because Samsung has a couple of different cases you can get. Two of them I would definitely recommend. One of them is kind of iffy. So the number one choice I would recommend is if you're not going to be using a keyboard, I would 100% recommend the Samsung standing cover keyboard, I think is what it's called. It's basically a hard shell case for the tablet, but it has two important key factors for it. One, it has little nibs that helps protect the S Pen from being knocked out. So if you're not using a case, there's a chance that the S Pen may get knocked out or bumped off if you're not careful. With this little case, it helps protect that S Pen to keep it in place. It also has a built-in kickstand, which is very convenient. So you can just prop it up at about, I think, 20, I'm not sure what kind of degrees, a variety of different angles that allow you to prop it up and watch a video or something like that. You can also then attach or connect to a Bluetooth keyboard if you wanted to. The next one I would recommend is if you are going to use a keyboard at all times or potentially want to use a keyboard, I would potentially look into Samsung's book cover keyboard case. It basically is two pieces. It comes with a back piece that you attach magnetically. It again has a little spot to protect the S Pen so it doesn't fall out, and also has a built-in kickstand. And then you have this detachable keyboard, which basically you just detach, connect with the pens with the magnets at the bottom, and it's very simple, very easy, and seamless. So if you want the potential to be able to use a proprietary keyboard, you can do so. Again, you can use a Bluetooth keyboard if you wanted to. Another thing to mention though is that since it is like a book cover style, it doesn't protect the edges and the sides, so you might accidentally bump into something if you're not careful, versus the hard shell case that protects the tablet all in it together, which is pretty nice. So it really depends on what you're looking for. The last case that they have available that I know of is the Samsung, it's like, I don't even know what it's called. It's a keyboard case as well, but it's a one-piece keyboard case. So basically you connect your tablet into it. It's magnetic again for the top, and then it has this little keyboard that's not detachable, so it just props up to one specific angle, and you have your keyboard. And that's pretty much it. You don't have a trackpad, which I forgot to mention that the book cover keyboard does have a built-in trackpad into that detachable keyboard, which depending on which model you get, you may get a relatively nice and comfortable keyboard. And the keyboards themselves are relatively similar. There is a bit of a difference as far as how they feel when you click on them. It's like a chiclet style on both of them. They're not the most comfortable, but I think they get the job done. But I also think these cases are kind of expensive, so definitely get them on a sale. So those are your cases that you have available from Samsung, and like I said, would personally recommend the protective standing case, but again, it depends on what you plan on doing with these tablets. And next I want to talk about that S Pen that does come included in the box in all three models, so regardless of which one you get a S Pen included. Whether you use it or not, it's totally up to you, but it's very convenient for you to use it for taking notes, and it is a Bluetooth S Pen, so it can be used for air gestures. So where you keep it though is, like I mentioned already, it's on the back. There's a little glossy portion of the back of the tablet where you can place it. It's magnetic and it charges as well. You can also place it on the top of the tablet, but it doesn't charge on there at all. The S Pen itself is a relatively thick and pretty comfortable feeling S Pen. It does have a flat side, so it does that's where you attach it to your tablet, but also helps it from rolling around on the table if you accidentally knock it over or something like that. But overall, it's relatively comfortable and nice feeling. It does feel a little bit weird when you're actually writing on the tablet, only because it's not like a pen and paper sensation. You can, I think, get like a specific screen protector on your tablet to get that feeling back, but I personally just go with it, and it feels pretty nice. It's very responsive, it's quick, it does the pressure sensitive thing where you can give it some pressure to make the actual writing be a little bit thicker, or pull back that pressure to make it a little bit thinner. It's really nice. And if you use Samsung Notes, it works really well for taking notes, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that S Pen overall is pretty cool. It is Bluetooth as well, which is why it connects and wirelessly charges. It gives you the ability to use air gestures, whether it be controlling your media or taking a quick screenshot, or even using it for the camera if you wanted to. And as far as software, you do have Android 13 with Samsung's One UI 5.1. I believe this is Android's tablet version. I'm not sure if it's Android 13L specifically, but either way, it's their tablet version for Samsung at least. And they do a pretty decent job of making the software experience relatively nice for a tablet. You do have a lot of the same features that you would have on like your phones when it comes to like customization. So the lock screen customization, you can do the same stuff there. Home screen customization, you can pretty much do the exact same customization stuff that you're going to do there with wallpapers and styles with the Material You from Google. You can put apps and widgets anywhere, stack widgets, all that kind of stuff is all available there. You have your quick settings, notifications, which all work the same as they would on a phone. One thing I do like though is when you swipe down to get to those quick settings and notifications, depending on where you swipe down, it will bring it down on that specific area. So if you swipe it down from the right, it'll swipe it down on the right hand side, which is very nice. And the whole UI, for the most part, the settings and most Samsung apps and most Google apps too, and even some other third-party apps will have either a one-handed friendly UI, or they'll have a two-sided UI where you have like your menu options on one side, then you have your main interactions, your main main section of whatever you pick on your settings on the other side, which again takes advantage of the bigger screen and is really nice as well. So you can quickly access and change through stuff very nicely and very easily. You also have all your Samsung ecosystem stuff. So everything from quick share between Samsung devices using your Samsung account. You also have the auto switch with buds. So if you have your Galaxy buds and you're listening to music on your phone and you want to watch a video on your tablet, it'll auto switch between them and vice versa. You have your call and text on other devices. So if you're using Google's messaging app, you'll only be able to connect via messages via a QR code. But if you're using Samsung's messages, or you just want to neglect Google's messages for now, you can receive calls and texts via Samsung's messages and calls. You can also continue apps on your devices. So if you're on a Samsung Notes, or I think Samsung Internet also works with this, if you're on a specific web page, you can then connect easily to the tablet and just carry on from what you're doing. You can also do that with the clipboard sort of. So if you copy something on one device, you can then paste that same thing that you just copied on your other Samsung device. You also have multi-control and second screen to be able to connect with other laptops. So if you have a Samsung Galaxy Book specifically, you can then use your Galaxy Book to control your tablet with the trackpad and all that stuff. If you have a other third-party Windows computer, then you should be able to use second screen, which allows you to connect your tablet to your laptop via Windows second screen feature and be able to use that tablet as your second screen, which is pretty cool. Then one of the biggest things, of course, is that you can multitask on these tablets. So every multitasking feature that you have on these Samsung Galaxy phones and also the Fold phones are also available on these tablets. So of course you have your Edge bar that allows you to drag and drop as you please up to, I believe it's 3 different apps. So 2 little mini ones and then 1 long one, or however you have it oriented. Then you have your taskbar at the bottom. So once you start going into one app, you can start to drag and drop using that taskbar as well, which is pretty neat. You also have the ability to swipe to be able to go into multitasking mode right away. On top of multitasking, you also have Samsung Dex when it's actually built into the tablet. So usually with a phone, you connect to a wireless monitor or TV or connect it via USB-C, and then you get this interface to be able to use Samsung Dex. With the tablets, it's built into them. So you can convert and just change to this other interface, which is Samsung Dex, which gives you like a Chrome-like, Windows-like UI experience and allows you to multitask and just use your tablet as if it was an actual laptop. And it works pretty well. I just personally don't really use it, only because it's very limiting and just in the fact that it's still a tablet. So you can't run like full Windows applications and stuff like that. You can only still run the mobile applications that you get from the Play Store or any web-based platform or program. So it really is still like a Chromebook. It's very limiting, so I personally don't really use Samsung Dex, but it's definitely there if you want to use it. As far as performance, you do have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 with either 8 or 12 or 16 gigabytes of RAM, I believe, depending on, again, the storage model that you get. And then you also get either a base of 128 gigabytes of storage up to, I believe, 512 as your max. And you also do have a micro SD card slot, so you can expand the storage if you wanted to. But overall, the performance is, I would say, pretty solid. It does have a bunch of hiccups every now and then. I've noticed the refresh rate just drops sometimes. There's a couple of delays, lag when you're going home after you're using it for quite a while. So it still performs really well. It's still handling everything I throw at it, but you will encounter the occasional, I wouldn't necessarily bugs, but more delays and lag every now and then. So it's still a powerful tablet for gaming, for multitasking, for Samsung Dex, all that stuff that you throw at this tablet, like I said, will handle just fine. I don't really feel the tablets warming up that much either. I know the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is known for warming up, and I personally haven't noticed it. Granted, I do use the tablets propped up most of the time, so I'm not really holding it in my hands. So there is a possibility of them getting relatively warm, because of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, being known for that. But either way, I think performance is still pretty solid, but it definitely needs a bit of an efficiency boost so that it can help with the more consistency and also with the battery life, which isn't that bad actually. And talking about the battery life, usually I use my tablets just for like media consumption, and it does a pretty good job of lasting me all day. But if you're someone who's going to be using it for a lot of gaming, a lot of multitasking, a lot of note taking, I foresee the Tab S8 dying. I think all of them actually may last around relatively the same. Maybe you can say a couple hours of differences, but relatively 10 to 12 hours of like all total full-on usage. Because for me, I get more than a day's worth of battery life out of these tablets, anywhere from a day to about 2 days sometimes. Because again, I'm only really using them for media consumption, so I'm not really pushing these all the time to their limits. So battery life is overall not too bad. As far as charging speeds, they all do have 45 watts of capable charging, so it can take them anywhere from an hour 45 minutes with the Ultra to an hour and 30 minutes with the S8 Plus, and an hour like 15 minutes or so with the S8 base model. So relatively decent charging speeds in my opinion. I think if you go from like 0 to 50, it'll take like maybe a half hour or so. And then for that, it should definitely last you for a little bit longer. And with the cameras, you do have on the back an ultra wide and a wide, and then you have on the front, on the S8 and S8 Plus, you do have a single ultra wide camera, versus on the S8 Ultra, you have the ultra wide, and then you also have a regular standard. So you do have a bonus camera on the S8 Ultra. But in my opinion, I don't really use the cameras, or not really my opinion, but in my use cases, in my lifestyle, I don't use the cameras on the tablets. So you can use the front ones for FaceTime or just video calls in general, but I don't really use them. So what I'm gonna do is just show you guys some samples. I guess I'll do the Ultra versus the Plus / S8. So there will be just one video for those two, and then the Ultra for one, just so you can see maybe a little bit of a difference for the ultra wide and wide. But take a look at these samples from the front and also the back, and you can decide on your own if you think they're pretty decent. I think they're more than fine for tablet cameras. So lastly, I want to go over these use cases for these tablets and maybe help you decide whether you fall in line with these use cases and may think, I might benefit from that. Because I don't think anyone needs a tablet, but I think a lot of people want one and they want to know, would I actually use it? Would I benefit from that? And some people may think no. And that's probably true for most people, but there's always going to be a use case for one of these tablets. So first, media consumption. If you're just going to be using these for media consumption, they're expensive tablets to buy for media consumption, in my opinion, but I think it's well worth it. It's a great display from the S8 Ultra down to the S8 Plus. The S8, it's got an LCD display instead of OLED, but it's still nice. It's got an 11-inch display as well, so of course it is the smallest, and then you bump up to a 12.4-inch display, I believe, on the S8 Plus, and then up to a 14.6-inch with the S8 Ultra. And then the Ultra and the S8 Plus are OLED, so they just look crisp, clean, deep blacks, beautiful looking displays. The S8 LCD display, not terrible. It's definitely more than adequate and more than fine for the average person for watching content. But if you want the best viewing experience, you're gonna wanna go with the Ultra, man. It's just, nothing beats it. It's like having a mini TV with you at all times. It's fantastic. But if it's a little bit too big, then you might wanna consider the S8 Plus. Just make it a little bit more compact, a little bit smaller. Next is going to be someone who uses these for note taking. So if you're a student, or if you're learning, or if you just like taking notes in general, all three of these displays or all three of these tablets will be fantastic for taking notes. Again, the Samsung S Pen comes included in the box. You also have Samsung Notes available, and you can also use any other third-party app if you wanted to. Because one thing with Samsung Notes too is that if you decide to switch from Samsung to something else, you're kind of shit out of luck, because only Samsung Notes is available on Samsung devices. I don't know if there's a way to get it to be installed on a different device, but I haven't come across it yet. But either way, all these three tablets are great for taking notes. Now, if you're going to be on the go, if you're a student and want to take this with you, I would stay away from the Ultra. I think it's a little bit too big, and you might already have your laptop with you, so it might be too much to take a big ass tablet and also your laptop. So I would go for the S8 Plus or even the S8 if you want an even more compact experience. It's definitely both. All three of them are really good for taking notes. So if you're going to be in one specific location, leave your tablet somewhere to take notes, and you might be okay with the S8 Ultra because you get a much bigger canvas versus the S8 and S8 Plus. But if you're going to be on the go, definitely go with the smaller ones. And then lastly, we have someone who wants to be productive and actually use it like a laptop. I personally would say don't get a tablet, especially not one of these guys. Well, they do have the Samsung DeX experience, and you could potentially replace your laptop if you wanted to in like situations where it's only web-based, like when you're doing research online and using, I don't know, like a Word doc or a Notions app or something like that to take notes. Then you will be fine. You can definitely do it, and you don't really need a laptop for that, but these are relatively expensive, and a laptop is around the same price as well. And you're going to get more out of a laptop than you are with these tablets, in my opinion. At least when it comes to the laptop and Windows stuff that you want to do. So I personally would not recommend either of these for that kind of experience. But for multitasking and stuff like that, just in general, again, depends on where you're going to be doing this kind of stuff. If you're going to be on the go, go for the smaller ones. If you're going to be at home most of the time or in one specific location, like at an office, and leave your tablet there, you might want to get the Ultra. So this is the way I would look at it. If you're someone who's going to be mostly on the go with one of the smaller ones. If you want the OLED display because you're going to be using it for a lot of media consumption, go for the S8 Plus. If you don't need that OLED display and you're okay with a slightly smaller display, go for the S8 base. It's plenty good enough for most people. If you want the biggest, baddest, and you're not going to be traveling with it much, go for the S8 Ultra. That's the way I would go about it and how I would choose them. Personally, I just use mine at home, so that's why I'm always using the S8 Ultra. So there you have it. That's the Tab S8 series of tablets about a year and a half later, just before the S9 comes out. I might even release this video when it gets announced, but either way, that's it with these tablets. You can see, still solid tablets, and if the price keeps going down, you might want to snatch one of these on sale because they're still well worth it in 2023. And I forgot to talk about these software updates. I believe they're still good for another I think 3.5 years. So I think they're promised 4 years total of major OS updates and then 5 years of security updates. So these are still well worth the money. So if you can get these at a good price, 100% would recommend it. So wait for the S9 to see what they have to offer. And then if you see the S8 series start to bump down in price, snatch one of those for sure. So with that being it, hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.